Hello everyone, my name is Ravi Kumar, President at Infosys. Welcome to the next new chapter of Trailblazers. On this chapter, we have two distinguished guests from Stanley Black & Decker, Jim Lowry, the CEO and President of Stanley Black & Decker, and Donald Allen, the Chief Financial Officer at Stanley Black & Decker. Jim Lowry is the President and CEO at Stanley Black & Decker, has been at Stanley Works since 1999, and has seen the company grow from 2 billion to 14 billion approximately in 2018. Has done a variety of acquisitions on this journey, organic growth, and redefined the vision of Stanley Black & Decker as a company with a global footprint in industrials, as they call it. And Stanley Black & Decker is focused around enabling the makers, the doers, the thinkers, and the protectors to innovate in a better world. Jim has been at General Electric before he came to Stanley Black & Decker. And as a part of his leadership journey, Stanley Black & Decker has been voted as America's most admired employers for diversity, the Fortune's most admired companies, and the Barron's Sustainability Index. Donald Allen, Don as we call him, has been the Chief Financial Officer at Stanley Black & Decker. Before that, he was the Vice President and the Corporate Controller. And prior to playing that role, he's been working on a variety of firms at Lockheed Corporation, and then before that at Ernst & Young. So thank you, Jim, and thank you, Donald, for being a part of this talk series. I've always been very inspired by what you're trying to do with making Stanley and Black & Decker a very relevant firm in the digital age we are all in. I'm going to get the first question up to you, Jim. I love this vision of how Stanley Black & Decker is going to enable a future world of thinkers, doers, protectors, as you call it, and how you enable them with digital tools. Tell us a little bit about this vision. And it's a very diversified set of brands you are actually now a part of.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Ravi. It goes to our purpose, and our purpose is something that we defined about 3 years ago, right about the time I came into the job. But we looked at the time, 173 years of history, 3 industrial revolutions, now we're in the 4th, and we were trying to figure out what has made this company so resilient and so successful over that long, long period of time. And I won't go through the entire process about how we came up with a purpose, but suffice it to say that it took a lot of work, especially from looking at it from the independent third parties, looked at our history, looked at where we were today and where we might be going in the future, and what was required of this company to continue to be successful. And we came up with this purpose. And the purpose is for those who make the world. Keyword make, and also for those. In other words, we are for the people who make the world. And so that could be through many different means. Through our tools, was the most obvious one, but actually through our healthcare business, through our engineered fastening business, our security business, and so forth. And so when I took over, we created this purpose, and it became very inspirational for the people, I think, in this company. We'd always had the purpose, but we never really identified what it was. And so that, I think, has really taken root, and it's been very successful.
And Jim, if I may ask you one follow-up on this, how do you enable digital technologies into your products so that these products become so relevant in a digital age where making will be driven by an interface of physical and digital?
So, being as traditionally mechanical as we have been over many, many years, the digital revolution is a serious step change function in how we operate and how we incorporate digital into our products, our processes, our business models, and all those different things. And so we started about 4 or 5 years ago when I was the Chief Operating Officer, and we started making it a priority. We started bringing subject matter experts into the company, working with third parties outside the company trying to understand, just trying to show people the power of digital. Because if you can demonstrate the power of digital, then people assimilate that into their everyday, even people that don't have a lot of experience, and they hire the subject matter experts, and the rest is a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Don, switching gear, I know you have a variety of roles in the firm. Being a chief financial officer is one of your big responsibilities. You manage the IT, you manage the global supply chain, data and analytics, and I also know that you directly run the securities business for the firm as well. And you've overseen literally from $2 billion to $14 billion of revenues of M&A activities, which was a part of that journey. What's the one you spend the most time on of all the response?
Well, I would say that I probably spend the most time on some of the things that are more transformational today in our company, which would be the IT organization, the advanced data analytics organization, Industry 4.0, and then security, our business security. Those 4 areas are in a serious state of transformation. Right. And at different levels. In the IT organization, we're looking at how we really digitize certain things and really focus at what we're good at in the world of IT, and then use partners like yourself and other companies to help us do other activities. Industry 4.0 is really about automating the supply chain and the manufacturing footprint and digitizing it as well. And so we started that initiative about 2.5 years ago. We built a center of excellence here in Hartford, Connecticut.
Yep.
And we're starting to drive value across that supply chain here in 2019, and we expect that to really ramp up in 2020 as well. And it's really about how we change the way that we manufacture products and use digital tools and automation to do it in a much more efficient and effective manner. But we also have to upskill and train our employee base as well as those changes are happening. Very transformational for our company. And then our security business is going through kind of a business model transformation, which is really how do you take a business that provides security to a large commercial building, but be able to offer solutions that have data insights and information that help those customers run their business or their operations more effectively and improve the growth rate of the business and the profitability along the way. And then the last area I mentioned was advanced data analytics, which really helps all those things, which is a center of excellence up in Boston that we've created. Yep. That is driving data analytics across our businesses, across the 3 areas I mentioned, and across our other functions as they become more effective and efficient at what they do.
Fantastic. So Jim, switching gear, and actually Don touched upon it, with the global trade conflicts, there is a distinctive need to diversify your supply chain, and you were one of the few who called it out and you made an attempt to do that. What are the few things you've done to diversify your supply chain and de-risk out of global conflicts which you don't have, trade conflicts which you don't have control on?
So about 4 years ago, even before all the trade noise started to erupt, we embarked upon a strategy for our supply chain, which we call Make Where We Sell. Because it turns out that the types of customers, especially in the tool business that we have, the tradesmen, for example, they really appreciate and prefer buying products and using products that are made locally in the country that they reside. So that was the genesis. We were also concerned about our concentration, particularly in China, but also in Mexico. And so it just so happened that right about the same time this was occurring, that the Industry 4.0 movement started to take root. And over the last 4 years, the Industry 4.0 movement has gained such tremendous momentum in Asia and in Europe, and is starting to gain momentum in the United States now. And it factors very nicely into the supply chain strategy that we have, because we can now cost effectively manufacture in developed countries. So we opened up a plant in the UK recently, which is unheard of, would have been unheard of in the last 50 years. We opened up several plants in the US. We've gone from 20% of products that we sell in the US, made in the US, up to over 40%, and we're on our way to 60%. And so those are just some examples, but the economics of manufacturing have changed for us as a result of Industry 4.0.
And if I may ask you this follow-up from this, how do you offset the cost? Is a part of hyper-productive Industry 4.0 technologies, embrace of that on your shop floors, is that going to change the economics and offset the supply chain diversification, if I may, or I'm being naive to say
and
that?
that's a big driver. Being able to automate and digitize our plants, in particular here in the United States, for the example that Jim was giving, really allows us to be highly productive in the manufacturing of those products and drive much more higher levels of efficiency across those plant systems. And as a result, you have that benefit, then you also have a reduction in your freight costs because you're not shipping products
Right.
in from other parts of the world. And so that's kind of an offsetting benefit to that bit of an increase you see in the United States, manufacturing
And is it
costs.
more to do with robotics, or is it any other advanced manufacturing?
It's really robotics, and it's around digitization of the plant in the sense of providing data and information to the individuals in the plant so they can actually make decisions before something occurs, such as a piece of equipment that might break down. They can actually have predictive analytics that say this piece of equipment will break down in 3 days. You need to do some maintenance work, otherwise you'll have downtime of 6 hours versus a downtime of 30 minutes. It's those types of tools and digitization that allows them to be much more efficient.
And Jim, if I may ask you, do you see Industry 4.0 as an inflection point for reshoring manufacturing back to the United States? Because it kind of gives you the cost leverage and the efficiency leverage to redo what happened for offshoring manufacturing
Sure,
facilities.
yeah.
You kind of bring it back.
Well, it absolutely is an inflection point. It's an enabler. Without it, it would be economically challenging, if not impossible. And we also have the benefit of tremendous organic growth. And so those jobs that are coming back in from China in particular, but also Mexico and other locations, we're not displacing a lot of workers because we have the growth.
Yep.
And the workers are, the company is growing at such a rate that there's plenty of work to be done. The question is, how do you do it efficiently? And technology is enabling us to do that in developed markets like never before.
And how does that tie up to reskilling in the sense, blue collar reskilling or factory worker reskilling, or whatever way you call it, seems to be one of the biggest gaps for digitization of large landscapes in manufacturing. I think everybody has a magic formula for white collar jobs and reskilling. Very few firms have figured out what to do with a factory worker to reskill. And you seem to be ahead of the curve on that in your thinking and the way you're trying to bring in a framework to digitize all your factories.
Yeah, I mean, it's an absolute imperative because the biggest enemy of Industry 4.0 is fear, and it's fear in the eyes of the workers, and also in the management teams, the traditional management teams that have no experience with this, and so we have to combat the fear through education, training, and so forth, and that we're doing through a more a digital approach where we're actually providing training to the hourly workers. But we're also undertaking some significant local relationships with academic institutions in particular. For instance, community colleges and four-year colleges where the training is being provided that is specific to that location.
Yep. Because
a lot of these plants are in remote locations.
Yep.
And the people aren't going to go move somewhere, and so you have to do the training locally. And so we're running some experiments. We run a big one in Jackson, Tennessee. We've run one in Dallas with a company called Generations, and we're seeing great success with this. And I think the other thing is that Industry 4.0 technology has to become the user interfaces have to be simplified. And I think in conjunction with more training at the local level and simplified user interfaces, that is how we are going to address the opportunity. And I'd say on top of that, there's just a level of digital proficiency that's required by all workers. It's white collar, blue collar, new collar, whatever you want to call them. There's a level of digital proficiency, and there has to be a willingness on the part of the organization to embrace lifelong learning, because this is just one chapter, right? I mean, there's going to be more and more chapters, and the chapters are going to come at us faster and faster, and we're all going to have to learn how to absorb information and increase our individual and our organizational bandwidths.
Absolutely. I always say this: lifelong learning is about how to learn to unlearn, and learn to relearn. So
I say that a lot too, so
yeah,
we're very aligned.
It's a very fascinating journey about how the lines between blue and white are going to blur in the digital age, and you're going to find new age jobs. There's one other thing, of all the digitization needed in your landscape, you need a lot of financial capital to do that. And I know that you're transforming your landscape to create financial capital, if I may.
Right.
And you've already announced to the street that you're going to actually take out financial capital from optimizing your operations. Tell us a little bit about that journey.
Yeah, I think there's actually a bubble that you have to go through for a period of time where you're probably going to spend more capital on some of these technologies. And we've seen that in the last 2 or 3 years in our company, where if you think about capital from a couple different perspectives, one is just capital like fixed assets and acquiring technology, and then there's things like joint ventures and acquisitions you can do. If you focus on the first one, as a percentage of revenue for capital expenditures, we spend about 3 to 3.5% of our revenue today. You look at our history, back about 5-7 years, we would spend about 2 to 2.2%. And so we've ramped that up dramatically to invest in some of these technologies. And I think that bubble is probably going to continue for another 3 to 4 years. And then I think you're going to see it start to level out. But one of the things that you have to be really careful of in this journey that any company takes is that you don't try to take capital away from some of the things that are critical to the core business, such as innovation investments that you make around products. Because if you start to make those types of swaps, you might be okay for a period of time, but ultimately you're going to cause a problem for your growth rate in the future. And so balancing that and recognizing that you will have to make a higher level of capital investments for a period of time. And maybe 3 to 4 years down the road, you see that start to level off.
Yep.
But it's difficult to predict, though, where that will go. It just may be a reality of the world today.
And I had one last question for both of you, and you're so bang on what you just mentioned about financial capital and human capital. I think these are the two things needed to scale digital.
Yeah.
And very few firms have figured out how to do it, both financial and human capital. I think financial capital, some have done it. Human capital, everybody is grappling with it. I just had one common question to both of you. What's the call for action for manufacturers? What would you advise them? The ones which are embracing 4.0, Industry 4.0 technologies, and who are digitizing their business models.
I think the most important thing a company can do, a manufacturing company can do once it has embraced Industry 4.0. Because if you don't embrace Industry 4.0, I think you're going to become extinct.
Irrelevant, yep.
Right, so after you've embraced it, I think the most important thing, one of the most important things you can do is to make sure that your approach to people is a very human-centered approach, because machines are very impersonal, algorithms are very impersonal, and they can bring bias into the system, decision-making system, and so we have to make sure we have a governance system to avoid bias. We also have to try to be as empathetic and understanding of the human element as possible.
Don, what would
Yeah,
you
I would
advise?
add to what Jim said. I think he's right on the mark with his comments. But I think when you think about it from a business model perspective, Industry 4.0 is a way to really differentiate yourself and create a value proposition as a company that's unique and different versus your competitors. And so if you're attacking that right now, you can be ahead of your competitors. And if you continue to invest in that space, in that technology, then it's a way for you to really continue to differentiate going forward, which is really what this is all about, is how do you treat your employees with the level of respect that they deserve, the way that Jim was describing, and then also make sure that your company continues to have a value proposition that's really differentiated versus who you compete with.
Yeah, a lot of us get confused about the fact that this is not about just people or machines, it is people amplified by machines in many ways. So you're bang on. Thank you again. I think I've learned a lot from this conversation. Manufacturers, you're leading that wave of Industry 4.0 for manufacturers. And all of us are looking forward to seeing you progress in this journey. Thank you again.
It's an
for talking
exciting
to us.
journey. Thank you, Ravi. Thank you for all the good things you do, great things you do at Infosys, and great organization. We much appreciate it.